All right, we are wired. We are wired. Okay, this is great. So I have to say that Steve and I have done numerous, I think I've lost count now of how many great discussions you and I have had over the years. But there's one that really, really sits in my mind. And that's almost 5 years ago. And it was October 2020. And Steve and I did a live Facebook Live, right, on what we were experiencing in real time during COVID as we were both remote. That was October 2020, and it was an amazingly raw discussion. Very raw discussion. If you can find it and you can watch it, I encourage you, because I went back and listened to it, and I was like, wow, like we really got in the weeds of what we were experiencing, and it was just incredible. And we talked about, and then we thought we were leading in challenging times, all right? Now, here we are, 5 years later, certainly not 5 years older, 5 years later, and like, man, the pace has not let up at all. In fact, the pedal's been to the metal, all right? And we sit here today in what I would suggest is even more uncertain times than we had in the face of COVID. So Steve, let's start with the fact that, first of all, you have a fascination with leadership, and that's how you open your book. You're fascinated with leadership, and you followed and watched leaders. But is everybody a leader? Like, are we leaders by design? Is everybody a leader?
Let me do this, a couple things before I address that issue. First, I'm a student of not just leadership, but relationship building. I often talk in my seminars that Lori Roth knows well, because I've been honored for the last several years to work with the emerging leaders at Prager Metis. I'm a big believer that, particularly in uncertain times, which are in fact the times we're living in, anyone who ever thinks that there's going to be a different time where the status quo is the strategy, that's pretty funny. This is it. But I'm going to say this. One of the best ways to prepare for uncertain times is to have meaningful relationships. To work on those relationships, to be intentional about those relationships, to be consistent about those relationships, to be genuine about those relationships. And the relationship that I have, that the organization I lead has with NJBIA, with Michele personally and professionally, the more you have those relationships, and Lori knows this as well as Jeanette Hoffman, a good friend and colleague, the more you have those relationships, the less you feel alone when the shit goes down. By the way, this isn't on video, right? When it happens, the more alone you feel, the more isolated you feel, the more you feel, I'm the only one who just lost a major federal grant. We were just talking, by the way, we talked business in the bathroom. The shaking of hands is always awkward at that point. Who knows what to do? So the most important message I want to deliver before we get into the details of managing uncertain times, leading in uncertain times, is to be more intentional, strategic, consistent, and genuine, working every day to build, foster, strengthen relationships, because they matter more than ever when things get really difficult. Now, as it relates to my fascination with leadership and is everyone a leader? No, not everyone's a leader. But in my book, I argue that in these times, on a great team, the book is about great leadership, not mediocre leadership. On a great team, to navigate what we're living through and what we'll continue to live through, you better have leaders. And people who don't think they're leaders, people on our team sometimes say, well, when Steve tells me what to do, I'll do it. I'm a great doer. And that used to work for a long time. Doers have a place. But I argue that for those of us who are ultimately responsible for our organizations, we need to make our people Lori, I'll do it. Get comfortable being uncomfortable. I'm not a leader, Steve. I'm not like that. I'm not like Michele Siekerka. I'm not the one who wants to be out there. I didn't say be out there. I said, I'm not going to allow you to wait for me to tell you what to do. I'm not going to allow you to be a super doer. I'm just a doer. Yeah, well, in these times, if people are not thinking, everyone on your team is not thinking, Michele, about how to What about if we did this? Why? No, I don't like where we're doing that. Steve, hold on one second. I have an idea. You say we should go this way, but if we could, look, I don't know what's going on in the White House. I don't know if people in the White House know what's going on in the White House. But leadership is also, and I couldn't care less about your politics. I don't do politics when I talk about leadership. But leadership is also, in my view, about people who work for the leader saying, hold on one second, Mr., Ms., leader, whomever, I have some concerns and I want to put them out there, and I'm not afraid to put them, well, it's risky to do that. We need people stepping up, speaking up, leading and pushing into a zone that's uncomfortable, because leaders who are in the top position, Laura, you're the CEO, but you ain't doing it alone, and you have problems with delegation. I know that, because you like to do most things yourself. You don't have that luxury, because the last thing I'll say before Michele picks it up again is I have this theory called keep asking yourself what you as a leader, what are the things that only you can do? What are the things? For me, for the not-for-profit, I run a not-for-profit, other than our business where we do leadership development, I lead a not-for-profit production company affiliated with PBS. While our friends at PBS are waiting for the other shoe to drop in Washington, our job every day is to raise money. I can't delegate the fundraising to someone else on my team. Translation, I have to be obsessed about the things that only I can do, the deals that only I can cut. And then the things that other people can do, that even you like to do and you're good at, Michele, you have to push those things to other people, push them into their uncomfortable zone so that you have the time, the energy to focus on the things that only you can do, especially in crazy times like this. Yeah, I'm fascinated by leadership, and Lessons in Leadership should have a subtitle. It's not really Lessons in Leadership. The book really should be said, here are all the screw-ups that Steve has made as a leader, and here's what he's learned in the process, and he wants to share them with you, because that's what the book is.
Well, it is a journey. I mean, it is a journey. Our careers are a journey, life is a journey, and then we learn things, along that journey. But I think you just defined the last, month of my life anyway, okay? The whole thing, and yes, we hold on to too much. As leaders, we do have problems, oftentimes delegating. Well, but sometimes we think, well, we just have to get it done. And you have to trust. But the only way you can trust others is if you take, this is how we do it, step back, right? We go back, I believe in empowering every person in the organization, okay? No matter your level, if you're sitting at the front desk or you're sitting at the fourth floor, okay? You're empowered to do your job. And I'm gonna ask you, what resources do you need to do your job? And as long as you've been honest with me about what you need, and I've given it to you, I'm now telling you to lead from that seat on your job and get it done. And don't come and ask me every 3 minutes what you need, right? I'm enabling you to do that. I've given you what you need. I now need you to go and do it. And then I'm gonna hold you accountable for it. And if you slip and you trip one time, we're gonna talk about why and what happened. That's the journey, because we all fall. We say fall, we don't have to fail, we fall. We step back, we go, oh, I didn't get that one quite right. All right, let's dissect it. What was wrong with that? What happened? Let's dust you off, let's lift you back up, let's get you back in there. But if it happens again, then there's something wrong in the equation, okay? Maybe you're not right for that position, and we have to have a discussion about why that isn't working. But the only way you get a well-performing team, I feel, as a leader, is enabling and empowering, asking them what they need, giving them the resources, holding them accountable, and letting them own it. 'Cause now they have ownership in what happens in the organization.
Define ownership.
Well, ownership, again, it depends, what my box is, okay? But I encourage people, don't just stay in your box. I believe also in horizontal leadership, not vertical leadership. So I want my team always talking to each other across the organization and understanding what each other's doing and how you can then step in. To the point you made earlier, right? We did have a period of time where everything was about, tell me what to do, I'll go do it. Oh, I did it, reward me. The reality is, I need you to come to me and say, I see this coming because I can't have 10 eyes. And I need everybody to have 3 eyes on everything all the time of what's coming around the curb. So I need to make sure that those people that I'm entrusting these different delegated duties to, right, are looking for what's coming around the curb, feeding that back up to me. But I've given them everything they need in order to be able to do that.
Let me pick up on that. So in the book, Lessons in Leadership 2.0, the tough stuff, that I'm really uncomfortable promoting and plugging, as you can see. So there's a chapter, It's one of my favorite chapters because I struggled writing it. It's called Feedback is a Funny Thing. And it goes to what Michele was just saying. So my theory is that giving honest, constructive, valuable, and important feedback, giving it is hard. Receiving it is also hard. Now, I know we're talking about next gen, new leadership, and there are some younger leaders and some of us who are less young and still leading. Michele talks about empowering people, giving them the tools. One of the tools I believe we need as leaders, particularly in these wacky times, is the skill to give and receive constructive, honest, hard-to-hear feedback. We have two boys in college right now, one who's graduating in May from Fordham. The other one, we pray every day that he does finish at some point from some school. But, and our daughter is 14, Olivia, who is a great athlete and a great student. But I was at her softball game yesterday, and I took some video of her batting. And I'm barred from taking video because the argument in my family is, if I take a video, it's the reason why she didn't get a hit. And then she hits a triple and asks, where's the video? Can't win. So I was taking video like this yesterday. And I saw her. I don't know. There are a couple dozen people in the stands. And she looked over and she saw me. And I was trying to hide. And I was also taking the video to send to this batting coach that we pay for her to become a better, because she's going to be Aaron Judge. So it's delusional parent stuff. So I take the video, and she looks over at me, and she shook her head, and she popped up. She comes over, and she said, I saw what you did. I said, Olivia, what? She goes, show me that video. And she's 14. I go, geez, must have went to one of Michele's empowerment for women seminars. So I said, Olivia, what's up? She goes, I saw you take that video. I said, Liv, I want to take the video so that the coach can see it, because you're lunging when you're hitting. Listen, I got cut from the varsity baseball team in college, in high school, and I made the mistake of telling our kids I went 1 for 16 in junior varsity, and they tell me, who are you to tell anyone about hitting? Which is all true, but I saw what I saw. Here's the point. When I started talking to our daughter about she's lunging, she shut down. Dad, you said that you sucked in high school. Olivia, it's not about me sucking in high school. It's about the fact that I want to help you. Dad, she wants to hear you're great, you're terrific, you won another award. We're good at that. She's good at that, and we're good at that. But as soon as you get to the point where you're giving hard to hear constructive feedback, in these incredibly uncertain times, do you think there's anything about Gen Z, whatever alphabet we're calling them today, and the rest of us, or are we all the same? Loaded question, Michele, when it comes to not only giving constructive, honest feedback that needs to be heard, but also, why the chapter is called Feedback is a Funny Thing, receiving it when the person giving it only has the intent to have us get better? Loaded question.
Well, I think we have to take a step back and reset. And what I mean by that is the problem is, sadly, I have two 33-year-old twins, so they're millennials. I raised them. I'm guilty, okay? I'm guilty. They got a trophy for showing up. They got a trophy for showing up. If I had one redo as a mother in a generation, I would have been, you only get a trophy when you win. Because what they learned is, I just have to show up. And that permeates, it permeates right into the workforce about what you have the ability to receive. Because what I learned, and I had to learn a new way to communicate with my children, okay, to understand how they receive information and feedback best, because they weren't used to disappointment. We never wanted to see our children disappointed.
Well, where's the disappointment in giving them advice?
It's the way, so now it's understanding, so you know this, right? Communication 101. Understand the person you're about to communicate with. Understand how they like to receive information so you can be the most effective in delivering the information to that person. And if I have someone that has a certain personality, look at me, that I know they're going to shut down if I use a certain type of language or tone, I better not start the conversation in that way. I'm going to take the lightning rod out of it, and I'm going to look at that person and understand, right? We at BIA, we did this great exercise a year or two ago where you find out everybody's personality. I'm forgetting the name. It's one of these HR wonderful things, and you're either a C, a D, an I, or something else, right?
Put you in a box, I know that.
It's a pie. But in any event, what you found by that, and we weren't surprised where people wound up, because when we looked at the room and everybody right was in a corner of the room, we're like, oh, I'm not surprised that those folks are together, because you kind of know their personality. But what you did learn was kind of the traits behind why those folks have a lot in common in that corner and how they like to be communicated to. It's just like being a learner, right? I'm a visual learner. I'm a visual learner. So I like looking at things that are colorful and charts and tell me a story. I love reading books, especially this one, 10 o'clock last night, by the way, for the third time. But seriously, I'm a visual learner. So it's the same thing. People, when they want to teach me something, they're going to come to me with something visual. Alice knows, my CFO, don't bring me the Excel sheet, Alice. Do not give me the Excel sheet to explain something to me. Put it in a nice little graph for me with some colors. So it's the same thing. That's how I like to be communicated with. So I'm going to look at my people who I'm trying to give constructive feedback.
Hard to hear, but important. There's nothing fun about this.
No, it's very difficult. The hardest, I will say, that in my position as a CEO, as a leader of my organization, the hardest thing is engaging with my staff on what would be a difficult discussion, because I don't want to deflate them ever, right? I always want to ensure that they hear what I'm sharing and why I'm sharing it. And that's the important, like, what end are we trying to get? Why am I having this discussion with you? And why are we together and the organization going to be better for what we're talking about right now? So I think it's about the approach, most important, and about explaining what's coming at the other side of it.
I agree to a degree. But here's the tricky part from my perspective. I absolutely agree with everything Michele just said about knowing your audience. The first rule of communication, who you're talking to. I also have an older son from my first marriage. I've only married twice. Like, Larry King was like 7 marriages. This is just 2. And I'm keeping it this way. So I have an older son who's 30, and he literally sent me, he's a writer, which means he doesn't make money. So, and he teaches part-time, and he's a great writer. And he sent me an article that he wrote, just published, what I learned from going to work with my parents. He starts by saying, my parents divorced when I was 3, and I used to go to work with, his mom is the best, and with my dad, and he was nuts, and I saw how he led, and blah, 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 blah. Why is this relevant? I realized that while all 4 of the children I have are different, and we have to present it differently, when you get down to what you need to tell, coach, give feedback to team members or people in your life, I'm big on, and Lori knows this, I frame things a certain way. And let me tell you what I mean by that. When I ask people that I coach one-on-one and in group seminars, why is it so difficult to give constructive, honest, hard-to-hear feedback that'll help someone improve? I don't want to hurt their feelings. I don't want to disappoint them. I'll use Michele's word. Here's my response. So let me get this straight. You only want to help this person. You want them to improve. You want to give them skills and tools to help them improve, but you're not going to do that because you don't want to hurt them. What is actually hurting them? Hurting them is not giving them well-delivered, appropriate for that audience, well-delivered feedback is critical. When you don't do it, you are, in my view, genuinely hurting those people. So one of the messages...
No, it's very fair, very fair.
But how do we teach people to be more receptive to that feedback? Because if they don't, they won't grow.
And I think that's where I started. Was we have to step back and reset. We have to reset how folks accept things, where their mindset is, where their framework is. Because, and let me tell you, I take the kitten mittens off when I have to, right? I call the question when I have to. I make the hard decision when I have to. But I don't want to come in that way. I don't want to come in hard at first. I want to try and bring somebody along if I think that they can be brought along.
You're softening them up, aren't you?
Well, you could look at it a couple different ways. I mean, wanting to bring them along is because I need them to get something done for me. I need them, right? I mean, it's one thing if somebody's like somebody got to move off your team, because that's a whole nother discussion.
Yep.
I have to tell you, as a business community, now I'm an attorney by trade and I practiced employment law. Man, I can't tell you how many times I would have a company bring me a situation like, why wasn't this person out of here 6 months ago? We're so afraid to fire them. I'm like, oh my God, right? You do what you need to do, counsel them the right way, document, and get them out. Because the longer you keep that rotten apple in your basket, you know what happens. You know how that permeates the rest of the basket.
And then
we've
you
all
lose, but then you lose
experienced
the
that.
good ones.
And you lose your reputation, too. You lose your reputation as being an effective person who really cares about the workforce. Because what you did is you protected 1% of the person and you hurt 99% who needed that person to go before.
I'm going to push on something else. This feedback thing is about being honest, being candid, being caring, because you want to also help this person grow. But I want to talk about this candor thing. I made a note when I was coming down. I was thinking, I did a seminar the other day with a group of physician leaders with this large healthcare organization. And I said, what's the #1 trait in building relationships as a leader? And one of the physicians says, being brutally honest. I said, how honest? And she said, you know, I'm just an authentic person. My #1 trait as a leader is I'm authentic, and I say what I think, and I say what I feel, and I'm always honest. And I said, always, huh? She said, yes, and my people appreciate it. So let me ask you a question about this totally honest thing, because I'm a believer in strategic honesty. I said, my wife the other day, we were going to a formal event, and she put on this dress that she just bought, and she said, hey, hon, how do I look
I feel an uh-oh coming up.
in the dress? And my wife is talented, smart, great professional. Her company is called Staged and Styled. I have a problem promoting. You could check it out. She stages people's homes for real estate. And I didn't think she looked her best. Total honesty? Let me ask you a question. What's the difference between, Jen, you just don't look good in that dress, it's not your best, and I gotta tell you, I've seen so many others that you look great in. I don't know why you're wearing it. That would be very honest. Strategic honesty is different. I'm not even going to finish the rest of the conversation because the feedback I gave didn't go well and we did not have a good night. Which will be a new book in the future about relationships and marriage. So here's the thing. When I asked this physician leader, I said, let me ask you a question in all seriousness. Uncertain, scary times. Stock market, let's not talk about it. Tariffs, who knows? Federal government, state government budgets. The governor said hello. Tricky times. How honest and candid and authentic should we as leaders be when we're scared to death? We as leaders, inside at night, when we can't sleep, are thinking about how to make payroll. At night, we are thinking, we just lost this big client. We lost this funding. How are we going to manage the budget? How are we going to do this? Are we supposed to be that candid and honest with our team about how vulnerable and scared we really are? Or, Michele, should we be more strategically honest and exude a degree of confidence even when we're not really, really feeling it?
Well, I think confidence is key. Confidence is key. When you have confidence, I say this all the time to folks, you can only be confident if you're prepared, right? Confidence, you can't make up confidence. You're like, I'm confident. Some people can pull it off because they're just ego, right? If you're ego all the time, maybe you think you have fake confidence. Real confidence, prepared 110% of the time.
For this?
For everything. For everything.
Even when you don't know what's coming?
Okay, so what are we going to do? We're going to lay in our bed and pull the blanket over our head?
I tried that. It doesn't work.
Absolutely. We see, especially in uncertainty, if we are not doing contingency planning every single second of our leadership lives, then we're not leaders.
What's that look like? This contingency planning? What's it
So
look like?
for every action, there's a consequence. For every action, there's a consequence. There's a positive consequence. There's a negative consequence. Believe it or not, you can find a positive and every negative out there because it's some opportunity that results from something bad that happens.
Even in really bad
Even
stuff?
in really bad time. Okay, even in really bad time, you can think hard about some positive. Okay. Now, there's also a second and third order consequence to everything we do. For every action. And you could do this with the tree. We did this as a team exercise, and my team had no idea when we started what we were doing. And then we had these beautiful decision trees all over the room. People were like, wow, I can't believe that because I did this. A 10th order consequence all the way over here was this. And it was a positive one. I never thought I'd get to a positive outcome from this, from something that was this negative, right? So it's this whole idea of you have to look ahead, you have to look long, you have to be constantly problem solving. Constantly problem solving. So let's take an example, all right? Let's just take an example. These darn tariffs. All right, everybody's got their hair on fire. They absolutely have their hair on fire. All right, and my phone's ringing off the hook as someone who represents manufacturers. Oh my God, oh my God. And all anybody can focus on is the increased cost of everything. And that may be true. And we may be hitting a tough, challenging inflation. Who knows? The economists will see what happens, right? However, what are we going to do? Just sit there and let it come at us? Really? So what have I been saying to manufacturers for months now? I said, if you have a big piece of equipment that you have to buy from China in the next 6 months, number one, if you can't buy it now, okay, because you don't have the money. Number two, start getting your paperwork together. Get your lawyer lined up. Get your exemption paper ready. And find your lobbyist or someone to walk that into, whoever the decision maker is, to get you a waiver on that one piece of equipment. And when you do that, you know what? Tell what the consequence of the ability for you to only buy that at a 50% markup is going to be. I have to fire 5 people. I can't make the expansion. I can't create new jobs. Guess what? That guy at the top in the White House, he wants to hear jobs, jobs, jobs. So find the words that are important to the person you're trying to communicate to, and no matter what this is here, draw the line to get yourself there.
You make it sound like there are more options than we really think they are because something bad happens. And it's bad, that's it. It's objectively bad. You're saying, yeah, there are some bad things associated with it, including 5 years ago, COVID, horrible, people died, people got sick, the world shut down. You seem to be saying there's an opportunity and there are options in the worst possible situation?
There's always, for every challenge, there's an opportunity. I believe that at my core. And if you're not looking at what the opportunity is when you're faced with a challenge, I just don't think you're doing your job.
So hold on. So if you go back, anyone recognize a newspaper? Okay. It's the New York Times. I read the Post.
I don't like the color of those lines.
Yeah, I know. I read the New York Post, the Wall Street Journal, and the New York Times. My wife says, "You actually read a newspaper?" I said, "Yeah, I like to mark it up and read it." So let me ask you. So years back, you remember the Star Ledger? So years back, when the leaders at the Star Ledger, and I wrote for the Ledger for years, wrote a column for years, when they're sitting around, they're going, "Oh, these phones, they're putting information on the phones, and there's news on the." What are we going to do? Let's just let it ride out. You're telling me if the leaders at the Star Ledger back then had the kind of attitude, mindset, and leadership approach that you just described, they could have potentially done certain things. This also goes for Blockbuster. So Netflix, you know. So you're saying that even though something's happening in our universe that we can't control, if our mindset is what you just described, there are opportunities that could potentially position us in ways that we never would be positioned if we just tried to pull the covers over and say, hope this stops soon.
Yeah, and guess what? There may be a little pain in the near term. More oftentimes than not, there's going to be some pain in the near term, but you got to work your way through that pain to get to the gain on the other side.
Do you tell your team that you're nervous and afraid?
Do I tell my team that I'm nervous? I think I'm...
You talked about confidence.
Yeah, no, I think I'm pretty authentic, and I think, you know, I do tell it like it is, but I do think I always try to have a solution to whatever the challenge is, and I try to reassure them that because we have trust in our organization, which I'm very proud of, that doesn't come easy, right? We talked about that in COVID. Yep. When you sent the workforce home in COVID and you thought they were coming back in a week, right? If you had a bad culture in your work environment at that time, you were never going to survive COVID. You were never going to survive a workforce who's working from home. But if you had a good culture with values that you exercise every day as a team, right? And look, we tripped at the beginning of COVID
We all
for
did.
sure, okay? But we found our way back to our values, and trust was at the heart of that. So I think if you have trust, when I have to deliver hard news, I think because I've built trust, I think the team trusts that I'm working on something to get us through that. I do believe that.
Let me ask you this. You said before that we want it to be as engaging and interactive. I have an approach in my seminars, and some people I've worked with know it. It's called forced engagement, which is where I just pull people into the conversation whether they want to be a part of it or not. So you got a group of great leaders here. I have a question, if it's okay with you. It's sort of too late, I already said it. So what is the number one challenge or concern you have right now as a leader in these incredibly uncertain and challenging times that still have a silver lining somewhere there? Hands up, what's the number one challenge you're facing today? I'll just call on you if it doesn't. Lori, go ahead, since you're about to become, the chair.
Did we have there's some mics coming. I see Wayne and Anthony coming with some mics. We are recording this. We want to make sure we can hear everything.
Yeah, while you're recording, does this screw you up if I stand? Do you mind if I stand? Okay. Yeah, Lori volunteered. So Lori, the number one challenge, Lori heads up Prager Metis, one of the greatest accounting firms in the country. The fact that they pay me really well has nothing to do with what I just said. Lori, number one challenge that I hate saying keeps you up at night, but close. What is it?
I think right now the biggest challenge really has to do with the workforce, right? With people and getting and keeping people engaged. I think that things have changed a lot during COVID. I think with the uncertainty of the times that we live in, I think that creates a lot of uncertainty, and people, we work in a totally remote environment, which is by choice, and it works well for us, and I think in our industry it's going to continue that way. But we struggle all the time with engagement, right? We need to have people engaged, we need to have them empowered, we need to have them motivated in order to continue. There's a solution to the problem, right? The solution is that we do training, emerging leaders things, we do continuing education across the board. We do have specific times when we bring people together so that they can learn and work together with their peers that are going to be future leaders together. So I think that it's an important thing to think about for us in our industry. Staying connected, engaging, being intentional, all the things that we talk about. I think it's building relationships, right? Yeah. So you want them to feel a part of something. Our tagline, we have a whole credo, and at the end of it is that we're a part of something bigger, right? So that's how we want people to feel, that they are a part of something bigger and that they have all those connections. So.
Well said. Michele, let me ask you something. Staying connected, engaging, as Lori Rocha said. Difficult, we have a fully remote team. One of the COVID brought a whole bunch of really bad stuff in our lives, particularly those of us who lost folks. One of the things it did for us as a production company, we reduced our production cost by 40% because we went fully remote. Look, I feel terrible that the studios we worked out of at PBS, they shut down, they weren't going to be there for us, but the silver lining was that we were able to produce remotely, which is cheaper. There's no other way to say it. However, to Lori's point, how the heck do you stay connected and engaged with, our people are fully remote, whether fully or partially remote, how the heck do you stay connected and engaged, as Lori said, because that's the goal, but harder than ever.
Yeah, so two things. First of all, I miss walking the building. I miss walking the building. We're flexible, hybrid, remote, whatever you want to call it, right? We come in for staff meetings and training and things like that. We make sure when we're calling the staff in that we make it valuable in time. We're not just calling them in to say, oh, we had everybody in the building, okay?
How about calling them in and having 12 Zoom meetings?
Yeah, well, that's...
Very strategic.
Well, I gotta say, and I do get upset sometimes because I'll go in and I'll see people in their different office and in the same meeting rather than going in the conference room and being in one. I'm like, what are you doing? Like you're in the room. Wayne's laughing because he knows what I'm talking about, right? It's like get in that conference room and be together. But so there's that. There's making meaningful in-person engagement together, and I miss walking the building. Because when I walked the building, I learned more, saw more, observed more about my people, what's going on in their everyday life, right? So what do I do to supplement for that? Twice a year, I do a virtual one-on-one with my whole staff.
You're intentional about that.
I'm intentional about it.
It's scheduled.
Yeah, it's scheduled.
Do you have a game plan going in?
Oh, I always do. Well, I always, again, we just talked about this yesterday. I said, so when the one-on-one's coming up, we're always talking about where do you see yourself 1, 3, 5 years, right? And they know that's going to be part of the discussion because we're talking a lot about professional development right now in the organization, and everybody is on a professional development journey for next level skills because we're all scared to death about what AI is going to do to all of us, right? So we're trying to skill up at BIA for that as an example. But what I do, I always start with how are the kids? Like I know my team. And it's not just my team. I'm talking about my team. Many of them are in the room, so you can all catch them in the restroom for the real story. And I did pay each one of them $50 today to just smile. So, but in all seriousness, it's all relationships. Like it's all relationships. It's all interactions.
But I go back, intentional, strategic. Some people push back and go, Steve, relationships, really good ones are organic. You keep talking about intentional, strategic relationship building. Just let it happen. I go, really? It's just going to happen? You say?
No, there are times, so organic is important, right? But you have to be intentional after an organic opportunity. So there's this whole thing. People go, we're networkers. We go out to these events, right? And people go, oh, I got 10 business cards today. I'm like, good for you.
Now what are you going to do?
What are you going to do with them, right? And so my biggest challenge always was pick 2. Be practical. You can't hit all 10. Pick 2 and call and schedule coffee. Lunch in today's world, if it has to be Zoom. But get back with that person. I'll say one more thing about Zoom versus in person. I think that if you already have a relationship and you need to get stuff done, Zoom is great. Because I could do 8 meetings in a day that I couldn't do 8 meetings before. But those are with people I already have a relationship with. I find the Zoom meetings to be things that are more tactical to get something done. If I want to build relationship, it's got to be in person. It has to be. Now I realize, I have relationships. I was saying earlier, I lead the Conference of State Manufacturing Associations, right? So that's the 50 of me all around the country. I'm doing one-on-ones with each one of them right now to see what they need out of our little group, right? But you know what? I'm not flying out to Washington to sit in person with, my colleague out there because that's not practical. So I'm really fortunate that I could do this through a Teams or a Zoom meeting, and I'm going to make the best of it. But you know what? Then when our conference comes in July and we're all together in person, we're going to deepen our relationship. Because I had those one-on-ones, I said, so tell me about your family, right? What gets you excited? How's things working for you in membership? What are your policy pain points? How are you dealing with tariffs for your manufacturers? Right? But then when we're together in person, we maximize our time in person. And then we actually, you feel that the relationship goes to another level.
Let me add something to what Michelle's saying. And I've said this in many seminars and a lot of coaching when it comes to relationship building. People ask, what are the skills and tools associated with building relationships? It's intentionality, it's being consistent, it's being true to your word, it's delivering on time, quality product, all those things. But here's the part that people miss very often. I said in the chapter on relationship building, there is no substitute for actually caring. And I was in a seminar, you've heard me tell this story before, I was coaching. It's a bank that's a big client now, so I don't want to say anything bad. So years ago, there was a top-level person in this bank that wanted to become the CEO when I was coaching this person. And he said, Steve, you're supposed to be coaching me. And I said, yeah, what do you think you need to work on? And he said, think about this caring thing. Because I'm a big believer, if you don't really care, you could fake it, but only so long. Either you really care or you don't care. So this guy, let's call him Bob, because his name is Bob. So Bob says to me, Steve, listen, I budget, bottom line, profitable, great, my team's delivering, productive. I said, what do you think you need to work on, Bob? And he goes, I need to come across as more caring. And I go, Bob, what are you talking about? He goes, people just don't see me as a caring person. They know I'm talented, they know I'm good, but they don't see me as caring. And he kept saying, I want to come across and be seen as caring. And he kept going on, and finally I said, hey, Bob, do you actually care about those people that you're talking about on your team? And he went, oh, you mean for real? And I said, yes. And he goes, I never thought about that. Here's the point. Caring is not a technique. It is not a tool. It's not a skill. Either you care or you don't. Showing it, being consistent about it, being clear about it. For me, I have 10 people on our team, and my colleague Mary Gamba, who's been with me for 25 years, said to me, you're really weird for doing this, but we have a totally remote team, some new team members, people have moved. I actually we were in a Zoom meeting with all of our production, 10 people and then 20 other people who are freelancers. And I said, please, Mary, take a picture of the Zoom. She takes a picture. I said, send it to me. I went old school. I printed it out and scotch taped it on my desk. And on my desk, I have the 10 people on our team and then the 20 freelancers. And every day when I sit down, I see that. And I go, you know, I haven't talked to so-and-so in a while. I need to reach out for them. So-and-so just had an issue with whatever. So when you say how you're doing, I need that cheat sheet to help remind me that I actually care. And I go, I need that. That's intentional, that's strategic. How the heck do you stay focused on those relationships without some sort of tool to do that? Is it organic?
No, first of all, I think that's a great tool, right? But no, it is. It's literally, you know, the calendar can be our friend as much as it's our nemesis, right? And use the calendar to your benefit. Block out time for things. You know, we talk all the time. I give my staff the right to block out time for strategic thinking or to get a project done. Say, you're on, but you're offline. Like, don't bother me for whatever. Put your do not disturb on. Get done what you need to get done. And if it means once in a while that means going out and getting a walk because you're fried, then go get the walk too. It's really important. So using the calendar as your friend, scheduling those one-on-ones, making sure that they happen. It has to be intentional. You have to make the time for things to happen. You have to make the time for things to happen. Every once in a while, gratuitously, something finds its way to you. But if you sit back and wait for things to come to you, you're going to miss a lot of opportunity. I want to pick up on one more thing though. Your caring conversation.
That guy's real.
I'm going to tell you another one. Here you go. I was all excited a few years ago. I was going into New York to have lunch with amazing high-power women, like amazing high-power women. And I am amped up for this lunch. I'm thinking, my God, I can't believe I got this lunch. I'm going like Madison Avenue. I'm all excited. I've heard this woman speak. You know, she's it. And like, this is probably someone that I want to, you know, learn something from. So I'm already like to be enamored, inspired, and learn something from this woman at this lunch, right? So we're having lunch and we're talking, and she says, if one of the first 3 words that someone uses to describe you, one of the first 3 words that someone uses to describe you is nice, you have a problem. That was it. Like, I was done with lunch, because I happen to think I'm a nice person. I care about being nice. I lead with nice. I think nice helps. I was so deflated. The whole rest of the conversation, like my head was in another place. I literally got back to Trenton. I sat in Heather's office. I'm like, can you believe, Heather, I have to talk about this because I can't receive that. I chose not to receive that because that's not who I am.
So you can be tough, give hard feedback, confront difficult problems and situations, performance issues, and still be
nice. You can do it. And let me tell you.
By applause, who thinks that you could be nice and be a great leader? I've never been accused of being nice.
I think you're nice.
You know, this is why, and Michele talks about know your audience. Growing up, I grew up with a crazy family. We're Italian-American. Some of you may relate. Maybe not. My father used to say, I don't like nice people. And I said, what is wrong with this guy? And he said, nice people don't get stuff done. My father was not only not nice, he literally, this is why my sisters and I have been in therapy for so many years. He said, on my tombstone, this is true, Steve Adubato, he was not a nice guy. And I asked my mother, what was wrong with Dad? I'm like, really? He was a weirdo. Like, what was going on? And she argued that his perception of niceness, which is not what Michele's talking about, was soft. His perception of niceness was people who did not have hard conversations and get stuff done. His perception of niceness was weak. I believe what you're describing is caring, empathetic, concerned about people's lives, and being tough, having high standards, giving hard feedback. They're not mutually exclusive. Okay? I picked on Lori before. Anyone else who either has a question, because I know we're managing time, or the number one leadership challenge you're facing right now? I saw that. Did you just give a finger? Was that one finger or 10? I'm not sure. Guy, it's Jersey. You got to watch that, okay? Who's got something? A question? Yes, right back there. Microphone right there.
So I just want to speak to the caring part. I've known Steve for a long time, and he is totally genuine in what he is saying.
Who's that?
You.
Oh, I agree. I wasn't sure what she said.
2 years ago, we had a shake-up in my company, and there was a layoff, and the person who got laid off was my boss. And it was really hard. And Steve personally called me, I remember, because I was driving on 130, and it was like screaming at people while I was driving. And he called me to make sure I was okay, and to make sure our relationship, to know that our relationship was solid. That has stuck with me all this time, even though it's only 2 years. And it's something that I always say. I said, I appreciated that call more than any other call that I got, because I knew it was caring, and I knew it came from the heart.
Put your hands together for my cousin Carol. No, she's not. I remember that. Okay, anyone else? Number one challenge you're facing, or a question for Michele and I. Come on, engagement, interactive. You were so intentional about coming down here this morning. You've got something. I see it. What's the number one challenge you're facing as a leader today? What's your name, by the way? Audra. Now you know what I mean by forced engagement. Audra, stand up. Put your hands together for Audra.
Good morning.
What do you got?
I'm from MSI Plumbing, and one of the current issues that we have is just plumbing apprentices, finding them.
Because?
Because for a long time, people were pushed towards college, right?
Yeah.
Not into the trades. Right now, I think it's 80% of master plumber license holders are over the age of 40. So plumbing is expensive for a reason, because there's not many of them. The process takes 5 years. Wow. The test includes business law.
So it's hard to become a plumber.
It's incredibly hard.
Why does my plumber suck?
Probably because he's old and he was grandfathered in before they updated the test.
Hold on. So one of the real challenges you face is the fact that the potential workforce needed for the future, younger people don't seem to be interested in doing the hard work, the grit, and the stick-to-itness to become a plumber.
Right. And it's a very technical job now. You know, it's not just laying pipe. It's like apps and technology and Wi-Fi and.
Well, let's get a shout out to the two women who are sitting right in front of you here, who are part of the solution. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Who's that? Who is this?
This is just really funny.
Who are you?
Hi, everybody. I'm Cindy Williams. I'm with the Carpenters Union.
Hey.
Love the
And
Carpenters.
I just want to talk about the power of leadership for just a brief second.
I thought you were going to solve a plumbing problem.
I am, I think.
But the young lady next to her is.
No, really?
So I met someone a week ago via text through another colleague, and as a matter of leadership, I brought her here today as a guest. She happens to work for the Plumbers Union and is seeking her leadership roles within the union, working on sisters programs, etc., but is very connected through the Plumbers Union. And maybe there could be some synergy after.
What's her first
Her name is Jennifer Garcia.
Put your hands together for Jennifer Garcia. Jennifer, grab that mic. Grab the mic. Jennifer, you're going into the industry?
No, I'm a journey woman in Local 24. So I just became a journey woman last September. So I just finished an apprenticeship, a 5-year apprenticeship.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
That's awesome. What advice do you have for Audra, right? What advice do you have for Audra? Listen, we don't solve our problems, they go away. I'm a big fan of the term progress versus perfection. For Audra to make some progress in this incredibly challenging situation she has, what is one piece of advice you have to give her to make the field a bit more attractive for certain younger people?
To make it more attractive, I'm not sure, but I would say seek people who need the job. There are a lot of people, young people, who need it, and they're not aware, you know?
Why did you choose it?
I have 3 kids. I actually have my bachelor's in psychology and sociology. I used to do a lot of nonprofit. I did not make a lot of money. I saw a flyer that said make $100,000 a year. I had 3 jobs, you know, from 3 jobs to 1. So I went for it, and it completely changed my life.
You should be up here right now. You should, listen, this is, I'm going to say, I'm not a big fan of the term organic relationship, but I have no idea how Michelle arranged for 3 of
Well,
you
we
to
were
sit together
intentional
like
in how we put people, no, kidding.
You should talk after.
We will,
Okay.
thank you.
All right, and we got a couple minutes left. Question? Yes, sir.
Here you go, Tom.
Tell us who you are.
I will. I'm not shy. I'm Tom Gilmore. I'm the president of the Monmouth Ocean Development Council.
Right.
And my question is about creating value. Our organization has gone through some difficult personnel changes. We had an executive director for 35 years who retired. And believe me, we came into a new opening of what the real world is like when he retired. And then went through some personnel issues. And I was always a member of this organization because when I came up in my career, I started out in banking. They told me I needed to be a member of MODC if I was going to be successful. And that's the reputation that we had at that time.
Right.
So we've sort of ridden on that for a while. And now I'm in a leadership position there, and I realize that everything is different today. Everything. So how do we create value of our organization where same type of thing as NJBIA? They're
Right.
the organization. You know, if you want to be successful, you want to be associated with that organization. So we want to get that reputation back. And a lot of things that we were talking about here, I'm a big believer in face-to-face. I think I was trained that way. That works.
But you have to adapt to the reality we're living in.
Exactly. So I'm working on creating value right now in my organization. So that's my
Let's
my
talk
goal.
value.
Yeah, well, I would say that, and I say this all the time, if I were just sitting at my desk in Trenton guessing what the pain points of the business community were, I'm not doing my job. So I call it boots on the ground. I have to go to the boots on the ground and I have to say, what are your pain points? What do you need? And what can an organization like BIA do for you? Be it providing a resource
That's right.
or advocating for a certain position. So create value by understanding the pain points of those you want to serve and then translate that back into opportunity for you to deliver.
Stay on Michelle's point. Let's be honest and candid with each other. There are a lot of business organizations in this state, chambers, other trade associations, business groups, and our organization has relationships with all of them. But here's the reality. NJBIA, through Michelle's leadership and this team that you have, they have differentiated themselves by bringing value, by being helpful to members. What the heck do you think this is? It takes time, money, effort to pull this together. There are a lot of folks who have events, and you go to the event and you say, what just happened? I am confident that by the end of the time you have today, not just with our conversation, but with other great things that are going to happen after this, you will walk away with something of value that will help you be better at what you're doing as a leader. Translation. Value, Tom, is about always being helpful and useful to the people you serve. Not in what you do, not in what you say, but actually making a difference in their lives. Be obsessed with that. You can't fake it. My view is that's a big part of the success of BIA because I believe that you know that there's competition for people's attention, for people's membership dollars, for whatever. You have chosen, your team has chosen to bring value. Isn't that what this is?
100%. And again, I can't guess what that is. I have to go to the boots on the ground and ask them, what is it that you need right now in this state of uncertainty, how we can be helpful to you? And again, whether it is a particular resource like health insurance, okay, access to a health benefit program, and the idea to understand how you can have competitive savings for your workforce. If I can be part of the solution on that to help small business have access to that, bingo, that's a pain point, because number one, every year in our survey, cost to healthcare. So what do? We go out and we find great partners who can deliver that resource in a competitive way to keep costs down for business. This is such an expensive state at BIA. We can do our best each and every day to advocate on your behalf for an affordable and regionally competitive state, but the reality and practicality is it's damn expensive and it's not competitive. So if we don't have some resources to bring to you to keep your cost of business down, I have not fulfilled the equation of helping you.
Michele raised a great point, because Michele, as you know, testifies, other members of BIA testify before the state legislature about state issues, tax policy, business policies, or the lack thereof. A lot of organizations do that. Not a lot of organizations do this. Not a lot of organizations do what you just said about health insurance. The relationship we have. BIA provides value to our organization through cross-promotion, through relationships that we built. I was in a meeting yesterday with Peter Connolly. You know who he is, most of you don't. Relationships, value. He mentions, we saw in the research, they're a manufacturing organization. We saw that they had a relationship with BIA. Let me tell you how strategic and intentional and conniving I am. I said to Peter, because we're trying to cut a deal for them to be a new sponsor, I said, Peter, we have the same friend. He goes, what? I go, Michele, we're like this. Tomorrow morning, we're doing a He said, I saw that in the BIA material. I said, yeah, it's going to be great. He goes, tell me about the relationship. We talked about it. I said, tell me about your relationship. Michele's, the BIA is the best. I said, oh my God, they're amazing. Yeah, we cut a deal yesterday. I used you to get, see, look, this is Jersey. When you go like this, show me yeah. Listen, Michele, I know we're over time, but I just want to say this. The partnership, some partners we have because we have to. Some partners you have because you have to, you want to, it's fun, it brings value. You're honest with each other, you put your stuff out there, you can't do everything for each other, and when you say no, you say it nicely, but honestly. But for me, I will tell you, I do a fair amount of this. And for those who want me to sign their book, I'd be glad to. If I find out it's on eBay tomorrow morning for $2, I'm going to be pissed. But I'm going to say this about BIA. The New Jersey Business and Industry Association is a great organization with a great team that makes a difference and brings value every day, Tom. And for all of you who have come here today, I want to thank you for being intentional, strategic to deal with New Jersey traffic on a Friday. Glad not everyone's on the road working. And I just want to say thank you for being a great audience, but mostly thank you to Michele and BIA. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Steve. Steve and I always have we always have a great discussion, and it's funny because we say we just go organic. And I had my little script here that I never picked up once because we're so able to just have a good discussion, and hopefully you felt that you have a few takeaways from that. So let's have another round of applause for Steve.